What would you do if you knew a disaster was imminent? Would you try to stop it? Or resign yourself to fate? Hello, I'm your host, the Unlucky Moviegoer, and our story today is about a man who attempts to fight fate. But not everything is what it seems. We open to Justin Sanders getting checked by TSA. He's clear. He has an encounter with Joe, and we find out Justin is an investigative journalist. Joe seems to be a fan. Justin then calls his wife and she tells him she does not like the idea of him traveling to Tel Aviv so soon after his recent mental break. Foreshadowing. Before our protagonist officially boards the plane, he makes slight conversation with the captain. He even allows a couple with a child to take his seat up front. You know, Justin seems like a stand-up guy. Joe from earlier is on this plane too. Justin then spots something peculiar in his flight basket. An MP3 player marked The Tragic Mystery of Flight 1015. Oh wait, that's...
Oh, one last thing. I just noticed my flight number is 1015.
He turns on the MP3 to a recorded podcast. The narrator begins to eerily describe his surroundings in great detail, stating that in less than an hour the plane will disappear from flight radar, never to be seen again. Justin asks the man sitting next to him to listen to his suspicious podcast. The man tells him to chill, so Justin listens on his own. The narrator continues to state that a bird strikes the engine at 10:21. To Justin's shock and horror, a bird does just that and strikes the engine at 10:21. He goes into the bathroom and washes his face. He calls an attendant and asks if they just hit a bird. The attendant informs him that he doesn't know and tells him to chill. Sus Joe appears behind him. Hey, how'd you get there? And tells him it certainly was a bird, also mentioning that he used to pilot for this exact airline and he made a few mistakes so he doesn't pilot anymore. Justin and this lady look at him all sus-like. Justin begins to re-listen to the podcast. The narrator states further that the flight disappears at 11:15 and the pilot's last words recorded are an ominous "Good night, New York." The narrator then mentions they will be going over some clues from Flight 1015's disappearance, so Justin begins to listen closely and search for clues. There are a few things of importance noted. 1. This is a state-of-the-art plane, and passengers can see pilots through cameras. 2. Something very unique must have transpired, since no distress calls were made. The narrator surmises this must have been due to communications with the plane being jammed. This prompts Justin to approach two Sikh gentlemen, telling them they must turn their phones off. He starts looking light racist in the process. The flight attendants tell him he's wildin' and he needs to sit down. Justin plays the tape further. The narrator starts to mention there is a passenger by the name of Igor Orlov, who is especially sus and who's going to testify against the Russian mafia. The narrator ponders if the flight might have been sabotaged because of said mafia. Also, because of these circumstances, there's a high chance of a US air marshal on flight, and they will certainly know if the plane is in danger. Justin approaches a flight attendant and tells him he needs to speak to the air marshal right away. She tells him she has no clue what he's talking about, and again tells him to sit down, understandably more annoyed this time. He sits near Joe and Joe gives him some friendly advice. Joe tells Justin that the air marshals like to think deceptively, like terrorists. Justin takes this information as an opportunity to try to level up his sneak skill. He starts going through a presumably Russian man's bag. People start looking at Justin like he's tripping, and Justin takes a huge L. The man tells Justin he's a member of a soccer team. The attendants run over just in time before Justin takes an involuntary nap for the remainder of the flight. Justin mentions to the attendant that the Russian mafia wants Igor dead, and Igor comes in understandably upset. The captain runs in to calm everyone down. The captain tells Justin he's really wildin' and he needs to have a seat ASAP. To Justin's dismay, it seems most of the flight is filming him. He then continues to go through the podcast, and the narrator mentions that there is one person who seemed to be connected to the disappearance of Flight 1015 most of all: Justin Sanderson. The narrator continues to play the audio from Justin's altercation with Igor and the captain. The captain brings Justin over to the flight attendant's dock since he disobeyed orders and is not sitting, and Justin tells him not to say the words, "Good night, New York," or the plane will crash. This seems to be another L, as the captain takes this as a threat. Justin is then arrested by, "Hey, I remember you." She introduces herself as a U.S. Air Marshal. The Air Marshal implores Justin that they are not going to disappear and leaves to speak to the captain. Joe sits next to Justin and tells him he believes him because anything is possible in the air. Justin tells Joe that since he was a pilot, he can probably land a plane safely in Canada, and gives him what he believes to be the captain's override control codes, the numbers 1015. Joe approaches the captain's booth and enters the cockpit. He savagely attacks the flight crew and takes control of the plane. Joe drops the plane's cabin pressure, and everyone takes a forced nap. He then thanks Justin for allowing him to escape his path. He says the fateful words, "Good night, New York," and flies the plane into a thunderstorm. Justin looks over his huge L as the flight flies into the storm and everyone perishes. Just kidding. Justin survived, it seems, but the plane ain't looking so good. He runs over to the MP3 player, which is still intact, and listens. The narrator goes on to part 2 of the podcast. Apparently everyone survived the crash and were found on a deserted island. Everyone accounted for, except one, Justin Sanderson. Justin looks up and, to his dismay, finds the entire flight crew coming towards him. Understandably upset about their circumstances, they blame him for the flight's crash and start putting the hands on that man. This is how our story ends. So what do you guys think? Was Joe real? Or was he like some Fight Club style figment of Justin's imagination? Let me know in the comments below. Till next time.